Hi everyone. I had a viewer request to do a long form workflow for Galaxy processing with narrowband data. They were kind enough to send me their M63 data, including their narrowband. This will be a longer video, so you may want to get a drink and a snack. I hope you pick up some good tips and tricks. Welcome to SETI Astro. After getting the files, I realized I needed to do a quick star alignment, so I've already did the star alignment and renamed all the files to what they are. Next, we'll go ahead and just dynamic crop. It'll be a fairly aggressive crop to ensure that we get all the black areas off. Alright, the next thing I like doing is making an image container with all the views, just to do a little pre-processing. And then I'll run Graxpert on them all. Okay, now with gradients removed, I normally go on to Blur Exterminator. I have some settings adjusted here that I find work well with drizzle data, such that Star Exterminator works really good to remove the stars without leaving a whole bunch of residues. Now that Blur Exterminator is done, I am going to go to continuum subtraction now, prior to removing the stars. And the reason is, especially on hydrogen, some of these structures in the galaxy will get removed with Star Exterminator as it thinks they're stars. And I don't want those removed. So I'm going to do a little different method of continuum subtraction. I'm still going to combine the channels, hydrogen, red, and red, but I'm leaving the stars in, and we'll do the white balance to the stars. So let's do hydrogen first. I'll need one preview of somewhere in the background without any stars. And then background neutralization. And color calibration. In this case, we'll leave the structure detection on, but no region of interest. We just wanted to look at all the stars and white balance to them. Alright, quick STF. There we go. And now we'll go ahead and extract that red data with pixel math. It should already be saved in my process icons. And I want to name this one Hydrogen Narrowband. Alright, there we go. And there is the subtracted hydrogen. We can go ahead and close that combined image. Next, we'll want to go ahead and do the same for our sulfur data. And we'll just leave those regions of interests at those same locations. Background neutralization, color calibration with structure detection on. And again, an STF. And here's your sulfur data. And the red pockets in here are now your sulfur data. So let's change pixel math to say I want the sulfur narrowband as the new image name. And go ahead and run that. And there's our sulfur data. It does look like it did do a little black clipping down here in the core. So if you want to ensure that that doesn't happen, go ahead and close that. You could always add just a little factor called a quality factor in front here. So let's go 0.95. just to bring down that subtraction just a little bit. We'll try 0.9. There, that's pretty good. You do want a little black clipping in the core, but not as much as we first had. So there's our sulfur. Go ahead and close that combined image. Okay, and then finally we have to do our oxygen. So we got oxygen, green and green. And we'll go ahead and do the same background neutralization and color calibration. And looking at the oxygen data, there is just not a whole lot. I mean, there's a little red in there. So let's leave the same 0.9 that we had for our sulfur and change the name to our oxygen narrowband. Go ahead and give it the subtraction. Yep, there we go. There's just not much oxygen at all. A couple dots around it, but that's fine. That is what it is. So now we have our 3 different continuum subtracted channels, and we should be done with the narrowband masters. Now we have our 3 narrowband continuum subtracted items. Let's go ahead at this point and apply the stretch on them. And for the initial stretch on the continuum subtraction data, I like just running whatever STF said it should be. So STF, hit the little check, and that'll link it. And then you drag it down to histogram transformation and over to your image. And it saves it as that stretch. Then we can go hydrogen. Still got the check, so we can go ahead and just drag it down to histogram. And oxygen. And there's our initial stretch on our 3 narrowband continuum subtracted datas. The next thing to do is apply noise reduction on these 3. I'm going to use NoiseX. It is just its default settings. Alright, once NoiseX is done, we have our sulfur data, our hydrogen data, and a couple scraps of oxygen that are in there. The next thing I'm going to do is pixel math, and I want to darken the image. So there's 2 ways to do it. You could use histogram transformation, and what you want to do is use the black point and clip it to the peak of the histogram hump. The more methodical way is to use pixel math and just tell it to subtract the median signal of the overall image. So I got $T, which is the target image, minus the median value of that target image, and I'm just going to replace all 3. So there's oxygen, hydrogen, and sulfur. Now you can see exactly what it did. The background is essentially black at this point, and it just leaves the signal. So here's your sulfur signal, the hydrogen signal, and our oxygen signal. There is some diffuse oxygen in the middle, but the real signal are these outliers out here. For the next item, we're going to want to combine our narrowband continuum subtracted data. When I have 3 channels, I like using the foraxx script sometimes. It's worth seeing what it's going to produce anyways, but I do need the stars out of the hydrogen, sulfur, and oxygen channels. So we got to go ahead and run star exterminator on hydrogen, sulfur, and oxygen. We're also going to need them extracted out of our red, green, and blue anyways. So we might as well just go ahead and run star exterminator on our image container. Okay, star exterminator is done. We have all our star data. Next, what I want to do is run the foraxx script on our narrowband continuum subtracted data and the stars. So script utilities, foraxx palette utility. I'll have links to all scripts I use in the description below. We have 3 channels: sulfur narrowband, hydrogen narrowband, oxygen narrowband, and their associated stars. And then execute the script. Alright, we'll put the stars over with our other stars. And here is our narrowband continuum subtracted SHO data. As expected, there's not a lot of blue, but there is some color variation there with some golds from the sulfur, a couple dots of blue. We can go ahead and minimize our narrowband subtracted files, get them over here by our other ones. Alright, now let's quickly focus on our RGB Galaxy itself. Now you can run SPCC if you want to color calibrate that way, or you can color calibrate via background neutralization and color calibration. It's really up to you how you want to calibrate this. The most accurate RGB will be with SPCC, but at the end of the day we're going to be adding a bunch of narrowband color to it anyways, so it's really a matter of taste. I'm going to go ahead and just not run SPCC since I already have the stars removed. Channel combination, red, green, and blue. Then I'll need 2 previews, one off the Galaxy for the background, and then one with the core. Background neutralization. And color calibration, we want preview 1 for the background, preview 2 for the white reference, and no structure detection since we don't have any stars in there. And a linked STF. Now for just a quick initial stretch, I could just run with the STF right now as to how it is, and then we could tweak the stretch from there. If you want to start from linear with hyperbolic process and stretch it up from the ground, you could do that as well. Before we do the stretch, we should run noise exterminator in the linear state. So let's go ahead and run noisex first. And there's another thing I want to do as well, since there was this banding issue with some of the channels. I don't know if you could see in the video, but this particular data has some banding to it. So I'm also going to run noise exterminator just on the red channel. The red channel did not exhibit as severe banding as the green and blue channels. Now let's go ahead and make these STFs permanent stretches. Make sure that STF is linked on. And I also want to do that to the red channel. And now I'm going to go ahead and do LRGB combination. I'm going to use the red channel as a luminance layer, uncheck the RGB, and drop this onto our combined RGB image. This should remove the banding from the background since the red channel did not have it. And there we go. All that banding is gone. And we're left with a very nice RGB image. And now for the RGB image is a matter of personal taste, how much you want to tweak it and adjust the colors in its current state. So I'm going to go ahead and do a couple adjustments here. I could start with the hyperbolic process, get some of these outskirts. I really want to save the core and darken that background though. This data does have a nice halo around the galaxy, which you don't see very much, so it was some, I think, some really nice data that I'm having a chance to use. That's pretty good for some tweaks. The other thing you may want to do on your RGB data is local histogram equalization to try to bring out some of the contrasts here, as well as maybe a small bump in color saturation in the RGB data itself. So I'm going to use mask range selection. Just so we could really focus on the bright area. Go ahead and apply that mask. And Control K, you could show and unshow the mask. Process local histogram equalization. And you can see what effect it does have. The bigger the kernel size, kind of the broader structures it's looking for. And right here at about 40, it's kind of highlighting some of the spiral structures. And you really don't want it as strong as that. I usually bring it down to like a 0.2, maybe even a little more in this particular image, 0.25 or so. Alright, with that done, I'm going to leave the mask on and go ahead and increase the saturation just a little in the galaxy right now in the RGB image. And maybe a little on the chrominance too. And then the other thing I like doing to help get rid of modeling in the background is if you invert the mask, so Control-Shift-I will invert the mask. And now we can go ahead and just bring down the saturation in the background. Okay, go ahead and close our range mask. And there's our starless RGB image. I think for an RGB image, it's looking pretty good already before we even add in our narrowband data. So I cleaned up the screen a little bit. I got all our masters over on the side, and I have our narrowband data pulled up. And we can go ahead and look at the difference between our RGB and the foraxx data now. And we're probably going to have to bring up the foraxx color and brightness because the RGB image continuum will wash it out. And I have mentioned this before, sometimes the continuum subtracted data will look pretty absurd prior to merging it back together. So let's just go ahead and bring the curves up. And I am noticing off in the sides here, there is some red from improper gradient removal. So let's go ahead and redo the trick we did before to bring down some of that saturation in the background. We'll go ahead and use our range mask again. Go ahead and apply the mask. We want to invert it to protect all our continuum subtracted data. And we just want to go ahead and pull that saturation down. Go ahead and remove the mask. This will be our first test as to how well the continuum subtracted data combines with our RGB data. So go ahead and I'm going to combine them with pixel math. You could use various scripts to do your combination as well, but I am just going to screen them together. In pixel math it is tilde, parenthesis, tilde, RGB times tilde, foraxx in this case. I do want to create a new image. Just call it RGBSHO. Okay, we'll adjust the colors from within here. I think something we'll want to do is, you could see spots where there are these weird pixels, and there's a great way to get rid of that. We're going to go ahead and extract the luminance layer. There's a button up here, extract L star component. There's our luminance image, and now what we want to do on the base image is run convolution. You want to run it just to the point that all those weird pixels are gone. You can see if it's totally off, there's our pixels. Pretty much right there at just a level 1. Got rid of those pixels. So now that you've ran that, there's no more of that continuum subtracted pixelation, and we have the former luminance. We want to go ahead and use our LRGB combination again. Put our luminance in the L channel, uncheck the RGB, and drop it back onto our base image. And that got rid of the coloration in there. There is still some granularity in the pixels, but we're still going to run another little noise exterminator here in a little bit, and we are highly zoomed in. But it did get rid of the vast majority of the look and didn't lose any of the sharpness of the image. The other thing is, now maybe we want to bring out some of these narrowband colors a little bit better. And I do have various color masks that I have already set up. These are ran from the color mask mod, which is just an amazing script where you could actually define color ranges, create various masks. They could be blurred. What I went ahead and did is made various instances for red, yellow, green, cyan, blue, and purple, just to have some base ones, but you can go in here and even define colors, you can click in the image and it'll even have what color it is. So that's where I got these color masks. And I want to go ahead and see what yellow there is in here, because that's where the sulfur and hydrogen were overlapping. And you can see there's not a whole lot in there, but we do want to highlight that just a little. So let's go ahead and apply that mask. Let's get our curves open. Zoom in here. We'll bring up the yellows just a little. Maybe the chrominance a little as well. And the effect is not very big. There wasn't much on the mask for yellows, but it's worth trying to get a little bit out of them. Now let's go ahead and look at our reds. Here's our reds. There is that big bright star off to the left. We definitely don't need to enhance that anymore. So let's just go ahead and clone stamp that out. We don't want that in our mask. Go ahead and apply our mask here. And we don't want it as sharp around the edges, so we do want to convolve the mask just a little bit. Let's give it like a 7. That's too much. Maybe a 4. And go ahead and get curves open again. So now we're really just looking at the reds. We want to go ahead and bring up some of those reds a little bit more. Want to make them stand out in the galaxy. You spent the time taking all that data, and that's really what we wanted to see. So let's just go ahead and give them a bump. We'll close the mask. And let's go ahead and look at those cyans and blues. And there's really not a whole lot. Again, we didn't have much as far as nebulosity from the subtracted data. So let's go ahead and just give this a mask blur. And that really bright patch there, again, we don't want that to get overcooked. So let's go ahead and tone that down. We don't need to highlight that anymore. So now we have our curves open again. We want to just a little on the blue. Just to highlight that background galaxy. I will have a full video for selective color correction using both color masks and scripts like Jurgen's Toolbox selective color correction script. So more to follow for that video. The other item I want to do is get rid of that background gradient cast as well. So let's go ahead and pull up our masked range selection again. Go ahead and apply the mask. And we want the inverse. We want to protect all those bright areas. So go ahead and grab that saturation and just bring it down. And while we have the background highlighted, now may be a great time to just darken the background a little. Go ahead and get rid of that mask. Now here it is just a matter of personal taste. How bright you want the background, how bright you want the galaxy. Like I said, maybe we do want just a little bit more noise reduction. Again, it's a matter of personal taste, how much graininess you like in your images. And I think I'm going to go ahead and bring the background down just a little bit more. Not a whole lot. Alright, so now it's a matter of let's go ahead and get the stars put back in there. Remember we had our foraxx stars from before. You could also use your RGB stars if you have really good RGB stars. I'm just going to go ahead and use our foraxx stars since we did have all that narrowband data. And for foraxx stars, you just go ahead and use histogram transformation, pull the midtones down to about 0.5 and run that a couple times until you get about the brightness of the stars that you like. And you can see here that there were some of those core structures that were pulled out. That's why we wanted to make sure that we did continuum subtraction with the stars in, so we didn't lose any of that during the subtraction. And now we'll go ahead and screen the two together. Alright, so there we are. I know a lot of people like this presented in a different rotation. So I'm going to go ahead and go 90 degrees clockwise. And maybe you do want to go ahead and crop it for your presentation, wherever you're showing it. I like that carbon star up there, so we're gonna keep that in. Now that's looking pretty darn good. You may want it to have boosted the color saturation on the stars prior to screening them in, if you want it more star color. But I would say that is a pretty fantastic looking galaxy with some color variations in there. Those pockets of hydrogen really showcased well. And even some of these other stars up here have some really nice colors. Even some little bit of structure over here in this other galaxy from the narrowband subtraction. And you do have those little sprites shooting off as well. I'm sorry this was a longer video. I just wanted to be methodical and walking through processing in real time some data that I have gotten. I hoped you liked the video. I wanted to thank Carl for sending in the data and asking me if I could showcase processing it. Please comment, like, and subscribe.